well, it's always at the beginning a little bit difficult to come up with some arguments for the first task of the speaking section, right? I think that's the most difficult part. And of course, to come up with illustrations as well, because we have to come up with those points by ourselves. We have to think about arguments. We need to think what we're going to include in the response of our own. That is to say, things that we are going to contribute with in the response. Now, in the second task, you're going to notice today, it's actually a very different panorama, because what is going to be happening is that in this particular task, dear students, the second task, you are not going to be required to give your opinion on anything. You are no longer required to offer, for example, reasons or arguments, or you are no longer required to think about illustrations, not something like that. In this case, your students, you are going to be seeing integrated questions, because remember that when we saw this, the first class of the speaking section, I told you there are 4 different tasks in the speaking section. That is to say, 4 questions, right? Because we discussed and we saw what I meant by questions, or what I meant by tasks. And I told you what I mean by tasks is simply 4 questions, right? And I told you these 4 questions are different among each other, because the first question is called independent question, because it asks you for stating your opinion on a very controversial but generic topic, as we practiced and we discussed last week, right? And I told you, right, in this case, for the first task last week, I told you, it's very important for you to know that in this point, in the first task, it's one of the few spaces and spots during the exam in which you are able to state your personal opinion about something. Nonetheless, of course, you took advantage of that in its time when we were in the first task. Now we have left that part and we are about to enter a new task, that is the second one. And let me tell you, this is, as I say, not an independent task anymore. This is an integrated task. And therefore, dear students, the first crucial difference from the first task that we already saw to this one is that in the second task, your opinions, your knowledge, your own personal data, your own personal knowledge, your own personal opinion is sadly not welcome anymore. You are not allowed nor required in this task to mention what you think or to come up with something of your own to respond to the question. What are you going to do instead? What you're going to be doing is to receive 2 different materials, from ETS. And what you're going to do with these materials that they give you is that you're going to be summarizing those materials in your response without entering your personal opinion, or without, let's say, affecting or without changing the information they give you. And that is going to be all your task. I repeat, the only thing you're going to have to do in this case is you're going to receive material from ETS, and that material is translated into 2 different types of materials you're going to receive. First, you're going to receive a reading passage, okay? You know what is a reading passage, right? It's very common, very normal. You're going to receive a reading passage. And secondly, you're going to receive a conversation. Okay, so for those of you who are just joining us, we are about to discuss the second task of the speaking section. And I was trying to say that in this task, we are no longer required to give our opinion on any subject. The only thing that we are required to do is to summarize 2 materials that ETS is going to give us. The first one is going to be a reading passage, right? Something to read. And the second passage is going to be conversation, okay? Therefore, it's very important for you to, of course, have your headphones on, right? Apart from having the microphone there, you're going to be listening to this conversation through the headphones, right? Fantastic. So, as you know, this task is merely about summarizing 2 different materials ETS gives you, okay? That means that you are not, in this case, for your response, you are not going to rely on your own knowledge, your own information, your own data and opinion in order to give a response. You are not actually allowed to say any of those things. What you are going to be actually doing, as I say, is to rely on the information that ETS gives you, because ETS is going to give you a reading passage and a conversation. And what you have to do in your response is to summarize that, no more than that. without offering anything else, okay? Now, if you notice, why did I post here a picture of a journalist? Look at my screen. Here I am posting, as you can see, the picture of a journalist. Why? There you have a journalist, right? Very common one with a notebook, you have microphones, very normal things. Now, why? The reason is very simple. The reason is because, dear students, I want you to identify this task with the role of a journalist. That is to say, when you're about to respond this question, I want you to think that you are a journalist. Why? Because let us remember what journalists do. For example, let's say that you are a journalist, right? And you are, I don't know, covering, who knows, let's say a very remarkable person. So in order to cover this, well, let's say that you are about to make a documentary about the president. So what do? You go to talk to about, or excuse me, you go to talk to different familiars and relatives of the president. You go and talk to his mother, for example. You go and talk to, I don't know, his cousin, and you ask them, right? Hey, how is the president in his normal life, right? And when they respond to you, you take your notebook as a journalist, right? And you start to take notes, right? Well, they are saying that he is a very humble person who does this, and okay, fantastic, good. Then you go to talk to the president himself, right? And you say, hey, Mr. President, it's a pleasure to be with you. Could you please comment a little bit about your I don't know, your beginnings in politics, right? And you listen to him. Okay, the president is saying that he was very young when he started this politics business, and right. So as a journalist, what are you doing? The only thing that you are doing, dear students, is that you are going to receive information from different sources, right? That is what a journalist does. You're receiving information from different sources. Now, when you do that, very important, what you're doing as well is that you're actually taking notes on that, because journalists, and as you can see in the picture, journalists take a lot of notes, right? Now, that is very important. When the journalist comes back to his office, what he does is he takes that information he wrote on his notebook, and he starts to prepare a summary, right, of that information. And that summary he prepares is the final work he presents to his audience. That is what journalists do. Now, notice that as well, journalists do not alter the information when they are good journalists, right? They go and receive information from different sources. And when they are preparing their summaries, what they do is that they try to be very loyal to the information. They try to reflect to their audience the information just as they receive them, okay? And that is very important. That is crucial. Very, very important, okay? Because, dear students, when you are trying to offer your opinion on this, that is going to be, as I say, a terrible idea. Why? Because you are not allowed to give your opinion. What you're allowed to do, okay, dear students, is to, as I said, to summarize material. And in order to summarize material, the only thing you should do is to reflect, to transmit the information as you received it, without trying to make, for example, I don't know, some alterations or changes to the material. And that is what journalists do. So, as you can see, what you're going to be doing in this case is you're going to listen, or excuse me, you're going to read, first of all, a reading passage, right, in this exam. Then you're going to listen to a conversation. You're going to take notes on both of those materials. And in your preparation time, you're going to prepare a summary of both materials, a summary of the reading passage and a summary of the conversation. And in your response, the only thing you're going to do is to present that summary to your audience. And in this case, who is your audience? The reviewer, of course, the person who listens to you, who evaluates you, who gives you the score you're looking for. That's your audience. So please try to make a very good summary so that your audience, of course, values your work, right? Now, that's it. That's what you have to do. It's very simple, okay? Now, you'll be listening, excuse me, here. For the first task, you'll be reading a short written passage. As I told you, this is the first material you receive. That is 80 to 100 words long, okay? And this reading passage, dear students, is something that you have to read in a very short time, but trust me, it's going to be very easy. Why? Because this reading passage, apart from being super short, as you can see, no more than 100 words, it's super short. You will be reading a passage that will always be about, as you can see here on my screen, is mostly about an announcement or change happening to campus, or a shift, for example, in classes schedules or new bus services, things of that sort. I mean, these reading passages are normally things that happen on campus, events, activities, I don't know, students' organizations, changes in classes, changes in courses that take place in a university. And you're going to be reading about that, okay? Reading about something that is related to a university. Very simple to understand, anyways. Now, after you read this, as I say, it's the first material that ETS gives you, right? Immediately, you're going to be introduced to the second material, that is a conversation. As I told you, you're going to listen through your headphones, right? Now, you will be listening to a conversation regarding the same announcement or topic you read about. For example, if in the reading passage, for example, you read about a change in the university's bus service, imagine, okay? If in the reading passage they say, well, as a university, we have decided to shut down the bus service because nobody uses it, it's very expensive, we want to offer other opportunities to our students and alumni. Well, you read that, and in the conversation, you're going to listen to two students from the same university. The same university where this event or I don't know, change or thing is going on, you're going to be listening to two students from the same university. And they're going to be discussing the same topic. As I say, if the reading passage was about a university planning to shut down its bus service, then these students from that university are going to be discussing that. One of them is going to say, hey, did you know about this new plan to shut down the bus service? And the other is going to respond, oh, yeah, listen, I think it's a terrible idea. They are going to be discussing about that, okay? Now, and by the way, it's always two speakers, okay? One of the speakers will be expressing his or her personal opinion about the news, okay? One of them. And this person, dear students, this person who offers his or her idea, his or her opinion about the issue, I want you to identify it as the main speaker of the conversation. I repeat, this person who is the one who offers his or her opinion on the topic you read about, that is the main speaker, because the other person in the conversation is simply a secondary speaker. He never says anything relevant to the conversation. He never adds his opinion or what he believes, or he never complements his opinion with reasons or supplementary details. And this is very interesting and funny. If you remember, for example, what you were doing last week with me when we were practicing the first task, what did you do? What you were doing was to offer your opinion about a general topic, and then you offered some reasons and arguments why you had that opinion, right? Why you held that position. And in this case, the main speaker, in order for you to identify it very simply, is going to be doing exactly the same. He's going to be offering his or her opinion about the topic you read about, and he is also going to offer some details, some arguments, some reasons why he believes that way, why he holds that opinion, okay? So as you can see, it's very simple to identify the main speaker. The other person, the secondary speaker, is merely somebody who initiates the conversation. He's the one who goes and says, hey, did you listen about this, right? And then the other thing that the secondary speaker does is he somehow comments on the information that the main speaker gives. Something like, and for example, imagine that the main speaker says, you know, I think that they shouldn't shut down the bus service because many people are not going to be able to arrive to campus because they are poor. So if the main speaker says that, that is his argument, right? His reason, the secondary speaker will reply, oh, yeah, that's true. And that's it. That's going to be all his commentary. Like, yeah, oh, yeah, that's true. Or for example, if he doesn't like the commentary, he's going to say, oh, are you sure about that? I mean, but they never say anything apart from that. Like the secondary speaker merely, as I said, initiates the conversation and comments on what the main speaker says, but he never does any relevant, or he never, adds any relevant information to the conversation, okay? So why do I mention this? Because when you are summarizing the conversation, dear students, you shouldn't actually mention the secondary speaker. You should completely ignore him in your response, okay? In your response, when you are summarizing the conversation, the only thing you have to center your attention onto, and the only thing you should, as I say, focus on is the main speaker, what his or her opinion is, what reasons he gives for holding that opinion, and what details and illustrations he adds for those reasons. The secondary speaker, don't even mention him, because as I say, only mentions irrelevant information, and secondly, trust me, you're going to avoid yourself a lot of troubles, because when you try to mention both the speakers, even because you want to, the response becomes super difficult, because there is a very you know, there is a very troubling and troublesome responsibility to make an interchange of dialogue. To say, for example, the main speaker said this, and then the other one replied this, but he responded this, and he objected this, and he came back to this. I mean, it's like super difficult, and it's completely unnecessary, because as I say, what the examination cares about is the main speaker. I've always responded like this in my exams when I took the TOEFL exam, and I always got incredible results, because I center on what ETS actually cares. That is, as I say, the main speaker, not the secondary one. Okay, so please don't feel any responsibility or something for ignoring the secondary speaker in your summary. It's not important. Simply that. Okay, good. So this is what you have to do. Okay, as I told you, you're going to receive a reading passage, then a conversation on the same passage of two students discussing that. You're going to have a main speaker, a secondary speaker, and your job is to summarize both materials, the reading passage and the conversation, emphasizing on the main speaker. Now, here is how the timing works for this task, because of course you have a very limited time for doing all these things. Okay, look at my screen. How much time are you going to have for reading the passage? Well, you're going to have 45 seconds, dear students. Okay, as you can see, 45 seconds to read. Okay, 45 seconds to read the passage, and you will not actually have more time than this. Okay, apart from that, when you finalize this 45 seconds reading the passage, you are immediately moved towards the audio clip or the conversation. And by the way, this conversation is going to last for approximately 1 minute, something like that, 1 minute and 30 seconds, sometimes something less. As I say, it varies. Okay, it's not something determined. Now, after you listen to this material, that's all the material you got, right? Now, the computer will take you immediately to the 30 seconds you have for preparing your response. Okay, if you notice, for example, here, your preparation time is being doubled, because last time in the first task you merely had 15 seconds, right, in order to well, prepare your response. Now that is doubled, and you have 30 seconds in order to prepare your response. Fantastic, more time. I don't think that nobody's going to complain, right, about having more time to prepare the response. I think it's wonderful. Then here as well, the response time, it's augmented. Last time you had 45 seconds in the first task, right, for responding, and now you have 60 seconds. Of course, you have more things to say, then it's more complex, it's fine. Okay, so 30 seconds of preparation, 60 to deliver the response. Okay, that's how it works. It's very simple as well. Okay, so before you make your questions, that I imagine you may have some questions, let me please show you this on the simulator, and then I'm going to be please giving you some space for you to make questions. If you have some, it's okay. Okay, but give me a second. I want to show you this on, as I say, the simulator. Yeah, okay. Great. So let us see. Here. Great. So what's next? Oh, sorry. So when you start a second task, dear students, this is the first thing you'll be looking at. Okay, first thing. What is this? This is, as you can see, well, a set of instructions, basically. Nonetheless, you don't need to read this, because all instructions, I am telling them to you. So, well, it's not necessary. It would be too repetitive, I would say. Okay, so just press next. Okay, and here we just start with the task itself. Maybe you're wondering, is this my passage? No, this is not your passage. Your passage is this one. Okay, as you can see, 100 words approximately. It's not long, don't worry. And here you have the title. Now, if this is your passage, what is this? This is a little bit of context, like a background for you to understand more or less what you're going to be reading, okay? You can read it. If you don't want, you just have to, as I say, skip it. It's not that important. It's just context if you want to have it. For example, it says, the university has decided to change its transportation options for students. Read the university's website announcement about the decision. You have 45 seconds to read, okay? When you see this on your screen, you're gonna have something like this. As you can see, a chronometer, right? This chronometer, of course, instead is going to be going backwards. That is to say, 45, 44, 43, 42, 41, and until 0. You have 45 seconds for reading this passage. That is, as I say, very short and very understandable. We're not going to read this one, okay, because I have other examples for you. This is just a matter for us to, identify more or less how this looks like. But as I said, we're going to read other passages later, okay? But well, now, for example, maybe you're wondering, if I finish reading my passage before my 45 seconds are over, what should I do? And that would be a very good question. My recommendation for you, dear students, for example, some of you may read very fast, fantastic. So you read in, I don't know, 30 seconds, right? This passage, you managed to read it in 30 seconds, great. You still have 15 seconds on your clock, right? What many people do is that as they have this button here that says next, if you press it, right, and they press it, you, well, are moved to the conversation. You're able to listen to the conversation now. Now, I wouldn't recommend you to do that, dear students, okay? I think that actually, if you have remaining time here that you're not using because, well, you finalized reading before the 45 seconds are over, I would recommend you to stay here without pressing the button next. Take your piece of paper, take your pencil, and start writing down, right? Your summary of this passage. Start thinking on your mind how you're going to summarize this and write. Okay, well, I'm going to summarize. I'm going to say, well, the university is planning to shut down this bus service because they say this and they say this, right? Just start to plan your response because, well, if you have this remaining time, if you are thinking about sacrificing your time, I wouldn't say that is very much, as I say, advantageous, but better would be if you take advantage of it, if you avail this time you have, and as I say, you start thinking about your summary, because at the end, you're going to have to summarize this yes or yes. Therefore, the only thing you're doing here is to use the remaining time you have in order to, of course, have more time and offer a better summary, okay? So when you have finalized your 45 seconds, the computer, okay, when your 45 seconds are over, the computer will take you immediately to the next part. That is, as you saw, the conversation, okay? And well, as you can see this time, I am able to reproduce here, right, the conversation. Now, this is not going to be the case on the exam, by the way. You are not able to reproduce the conversation, dear students. The only thing you can do is to, as I say, when you arrive to this menu, the computer automatically reproduces the conversation. In this case, I can do it because, of course, it's a simulator, it's not the real exam. But as I say, you don't have to worry about pressing anything or something because the computer reproduces everything automatically, okay? So when you come here, the computer will say, well, in your headphones, right? Now you are gonna listen to a conversation, begin listening now, right? And it's gonna reproduce. Let us listen just for a while, more or less to identify how this is going to be looking like. Listen, okay?
Now listen to two students discussing the announcement.
So did you hear that the university is cutting its transportation budget and ending all bus service?
I did hear that. But it's no big deal, right? I mean, the university is also compensating all students with $50 vouchers for public transportation. The vouchers can be used on, like, the subway and public buses. So it sounds like there won't be a big problem.
Are you kidding me? This is going to be horribly inconvenient. I mean, like, first of all, there's no public transportation to the DeWolf Science Center. It's far away from any subway and bus station, and getting there will require a 20-minute walk through some of the worst neighborhoods in the city.
I guess that will be a problem for some people. But try to look at it this way. There's too much division in this country between university students and the people who live in the cities around them. Won't this encourage a spirit of togetherness, like when we're all using the same public transportation?
But actually, I think that this policy, that it won't help create much new interaction between students and city dwellers at all.
Why not?
Well, because $50 is not very much money. I mean, it'll probably only cover about a month's worth of subway or bus passes. And, most students won't be able to afford to take public transportation. So with students forced to walk everywhere, I just don't understand where all of this great new interaction is going to be happening.
The female student expresses her opinion about why she disagrees with the university's new policy. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion.
Well, great. I think that you managed to listen right to the complexity. Well, not very difficult. Not that much. Well, let's say hard to understand. I think that it is a very easy English, right? In this case. Anyways, well, if you noticed, as I told you, there is a main speaker. Great, fantastic. That's great. You have a main speaker. You also have, as I told you, the capacity to, well, you have the capacity to, in this case, understand what they are saying. And the only thing you have to do after you finalize listening to this conversation is you press next. And here you have it, right? As you can see, which is next is that you are moved to a new menu. And here you're going to have your 30 seconds of preparation. You say, well, now I'm going to start with, well, the voice in your headphones, right? Tell you. Okay, in your headphones, the voice says, okay, now that you have read and you have listened to this material, please start preparing your response now, right? And there is a sound like a beep, as I told you, like beep. And when you listen to that, it means that the chronometer is already counting down. Therefore, you have to start, right? Because your 30 seconds started. So you take your piece of paper with the summary you prepare, right, of the reading passage, or with the notes you took of the conversation, and you start preparing, right, your summary. Of course, I'm going to give you a template and a structure. Don't worry about that. But of course, you have to somehow here apply all the skills we learned in the listening section and your notes and everything in order, of course, for you to make a very easy summary in this 30 seconds. Sorry. And afterwards, you have to, well, when the 30 seconds are over, the voice in your headphones will once again speak and will say, okay, now that you have prepared your response, please start delivering your response after a beep. And beep again. And well, what does that mean? Well, it means very simply that it means that the conversation, right? Excuse me, it means that the 30 seconds for preparing your response are over, and you have to start giving your summary of both materials, the reading and the conversation. Then you start, right? You speak, and that's it. Okay? And this is exactly how it's going to be on the exam. Reading passage, listening passage, 30 seconds of preparation, 60 seconds of response. Is there any question, dear students? Now I want to first give you some space for you to ask any question. If you have some, please tell me. Is there anything that I could clarify with regard to the menu, with regard to the previous instructions? Tell me. Abigail, Mariana, Roy, Cecilia, any question with regard to the second task? No question, we're clear?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Roy? Abigail, okay, thank you. Thank you as well. Fantastic. Awesome. Well, so I think that there are no questions then. And let us continue. Okay, let us continue with our response. Well, so we have said then that we are going to be practicing for this, but before I do that, let me show you some illustrations, okay? Because of course I know that through illustration is way easier to understand, right? So let me just take this. Where am I? Yeah, okay. So let me show you, please, some examples, okay, of this. And this time we're going to read together. Okay, so let's go. Take this. Here we are. Okay, fantastic. So let us read together. We're going to be, as I say, having 2 illustrations of this task. And I, of course, know that this is going to help you to immerse yourself into this task way easily. Well, here we are. So let me paste this to the chat box, okay, for you to read with me more comfortably during the chat box. And I'm going to read this aloud, okay? So this would represent very similar passage, a reading passage, to the ones you're going to receive on the exam, okay? So let us read together what this passage says. It says, the university is planning to offer free Spanish courses this trimester. Due to an influx of exchange students from Spain and Latin America, starting this trimester, the university will be offering free Spanish courses tuition for interested parties. Participation in these courses is limited. However, and preference will be given to those students taking part in activities directly related to the exchange program. Go to the university website for further details. Okay, so that's the reading passage. As you can see, a very easy passage to read, very smooth, very plain, easy. Okay, now after you read this, as I told you, you have 45 seconds to do so. If you finalized before, start preparing your summary of this, and then you're going to listen to a conversation of 2 students discussing the exact same topic. In this case, we have read that a university is planning to, in this case, offer free Spanish courses to its alumni, but it's specifying that they are going to make some sort of, let's say, separation, and people who are directly engaged with the exchange programs are going to have some sort of benefit and are going to be the first ones to have the opportunity to receive this free tuition, right? Now that we have said this, let us see what 2 students are discussing about this. And remember, there's always going to be a main speaker who is going to offer his or her opinion and is going to offer some reasons why he or she holds that opinion. Your task in this case is to identify that person and to pay attention and take your notes on that particular person, okay? Listen to him, to his reasons, to his opinion, and well, let us see what you can find out in this audio, okay? Let us listen together.
Now listen to 2 students discussing the Spanish classes.
What do you think about the Spanish courses the university is offering?
I'm not sure. I mean, last semester they did the same thing with an IT course and it was booked out within 10 minutes of the registration from going online.
You think it'll be the same for this?
Well, yeah. Spanish is a popular language to learn, and look at what it says about the preferences given. There are going to be loads of students who fit the bill for preferential access.
Well, I'm going to give it a look anyway. I might get lucky.
Sure. To be honest, I think it would be better if they didn't make the course free. A lot of people will sign up just because they don't have to pay anything, then not turn up to half of the classes. If you have to pay for something, you're more likely to use it.
I'm not sure. I mean, this way it's accessible even to poorer students.
I guess so. I suppose I'm still annoyed that I couldn't do the IT course last semester. I really needed the chance to brush up on my computing skills.
Great, there you are. So, so what can I tell you about this one? Well, great. I think that, as you can see, in this case, well, this conversation is very easy as well to understand. And well, I think that it is plain, right? Who is the main speaker in this one? The female student is the main speaker. And well, why? Because she is the one offering her opinion. She says that she dislikes this modality of these Spanish courses because she believes, right, that, and she gives some reasons, some arguments, right? Now, after you listen to this, you have your 30 seconds in order to prepare the response, and then you have 60 seconds to respond. Let us listen to my response, okay, directly to my response. And you're gonna notice, as I told you, that what I do in my response is merely summarizing both materials. I summarize the reading passage, and I summarize as well the conversation. Always emphasizing and being very careful not to mention my own opinion. I never say, for example, if I agree or if I disagree with the student. No, you're gonna notice that the only thing I do is to be a good journalist, and I prepare a good summary, and I deliver that summary of the reading and the conversation. Okay, let us in this case, of course, listen, and please try to see my structure, my phrases, so that I can show you the template later on. Okay, let's see. In the reading passage, we observe that the university wants to offer free Spanish courses since next trimester to all students, but especially to those who are engaged with exchange programs. On the other hand, we also observe a student who disagrees with this modality because she considers that just as it happened with the IT classes, so many people, just because the courses are free, are going to register and many students are going to stay out of the lessons. She also considers that given that Spanish is a very popular language, many students will also be super interested in learning this language and many people will simply stay out of the lessons. She also considers that the university should make these courses not free but pay, and that way just the students who are really interested in these courses will take part of them and not just the students who, because the courses are free, get into. Great, there you are. So we have seen that in my response, the only thing that I did was to summarize the reading passage, first of all, and then I moved to the conversation, right? I stated the main speaker's opinion, in this case, the female student who said she disliked this idea of free Spanish courses. And I also stated her reasons, right? She said in this case that she considered that people get into these courses but do not actually attend the courses because they are free. And that's the only reason why they get into and they enroll for the classes, right? And secondly, she considers that when you pay, you somehow appreciate and strive more on those courses because it's something that is meaningful to you. Those were the reasons that the speaker said, and the only thing that I did was to transmit that in my summary of the conversation, right? No more than that. I never complimented, for example, what the speaker said. I never argued against her, or I never objected her, or I never expressed how I agree with her. No, right? The only thing I did was to summarize the conversation, okay? And if you notice, I didn't talk about the secondary speaker. I never mentioned the secondary speaker, the male student. I didn't mention it, right? I merely mentioned the main speaker, the female student, and that is what you have to do. Obviate, ignore the secondary speaker. It's simply unnecessary, irrelevant. Talked about the first one, talked about the main speaker, okay? One more illustration before we move on to the template. Let me open it here. Okay, I'm gonna paste this new passage to the chat box as well, and you can read it there. There you are. Okay, let us read this together. It says, the campus fitness center will permanently close at the end of the semester. This decision was made by the university administration in coordination with representatives of the Students Association. Unfortunately, the building currently housing the center is very old, and the university can no longer afford the cost of maintaining it or providing heat and air conditioning as required. Furthermore, the popularity of the center has declined since the university formed partnerships with several private fitness centers in the city. These partnerships mean that all full and part students can access 5 privately owned gyms across the city at no cost. Okay, very good. So, fantastic. In this case, we have read this passage, in this case about a university for some reason trying to shut down the fitness center. They explain those reasons here. Now let us listen to 2 students discussing this. As I told you, try to identify the main speaker, okay? The one giving his opinion and also his reasons, okay? Let's listen to this new conversation.
What do you think about this announcement?
To be honest, I'm completely opposed to the plan.
Really? Why?
Because shutting down the fitness center isn't really going to save much money. I mean, sure, the building is really old, but even if it isn't used on a regular basis, the school still has to maintain it. They have to make sure it is safe and that it doesn't become a fire hazard or something like that.
I didn't think about that.
Right, and even tearing the building down will be expensive because of all the construction workers they'll have to hire. Plus, once it's gone, we're going to need to replace it with something new, so we shouldn't shut down the gym just to save money.
You make a good point.
And it's not like all the students can easily use the gyms in the city. The closest one is a 30-minute drive from school. How are people who live in dorms on campus supposed to reach them if they don't have their own car?
You know, I took a taxi to one of the gyms and it cost nearly $20. I can't afford to pay that much money every time I want to exercise.
Exactly. And even if you can afford to pay for a taxi, it will be really challenging to get one if you want to exercise late at night. I don't think that that was really considered when the decision to close the fitness center was made.
Right. So, there you are. So now, what is the point? So as you can see, the conversation, dear students, it's a very simple one as well. And in this case, the male student is the main speaker, right? Because he's the one who offers his opinion, who offers some reasons why he considers this fitness center shouldn't be closed, excuse me, or shouldn't be shut down. Now, now that we have listened and we have read these materials, it's time for us to go and, of course, listen to my response, okay, on this particular one. So let us listen to my response, and then we're going to comment on that. To begin with, we have seen in the reading passage that the university plans to close the campus fitness center permanently because they consider that nobody uses it, and because they consider that students can go to the private gyms that they have hired across the city, and also because the maintenance costs for these fitness centers are too high for the university. On the other hand, we have seen that the student disagrees with this because he considers that this is not going to save money. The university will still have to maintain the buildings, and maybe these buildings are going to provoke a fire, and that is going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that if they want to demolish it, they will have to pay workers, and that is also going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that the alternative gyms are not easily reached by other students because they are far away from the university, they are too expensive, and many people who work out by night will not be able to find a taxi. Great. So, as you noticed in my response, what I did was to summarize, right, the main speaker's opinion, reason, and of course the reading passage first. So I think that until this point, it's very clear what you have to do. But anyways, of course, as you noticed, in both of my responses, I was following the same pattern. I was following the same structure or the same template, right? And certainly it's because here I have to offer you the template for this new task. Okay, so please take your notes on this new template. Maybe you can take a picture if you want. It's okay, okay? But tomorrow we're going to use this template in order to practice for the second task, okay? So it's very important for us to have it safe. Okay, very good. So, so as you can see here, our template consists of 4 different steps or 4 different parts, right? The first one says to begin with, right, in the reading passage, and this is exactly what I always said, right? I said to begin with in the reading passage, right, and I continue and I continue. This is an introductory phrase. You can change the wording if you don't like it, to begin with in the reading passage, but the idea is that you always introduce your response with something else, right? And then comes the summary of the reading passage. So for example, as the last illustration, to begin with in the reading passage, we have seen that the university is planning to shut down the fitness center because they consider that nobody uses it and that the private gyms they offer as an alternative are better for their alumni, right? Something like that. Then after you finalize the materials of the reading passage and you have summarized it, you move on to the second step. That is, on the other hand, right? On the other hand, por otra parte, on the other hand, right? That was always a transition phrase that I used, right? On the other hand, that is the second step. On the other hand, for example, on the other hand, we have listened to 2 students discussing this topic, and one of them disagrees with this because he considers, right? And here I jump to the third step. So as you can see, the second step is basically the transition moment, right? It's where you start to talk about the conversation instead of the reading. And here you explain that there is somebody in the conversation that disagrees or agrees with this change. As I say, on the other hand, we have seen a conversation in which one student disagrees with this idea, and he says, right, and when you are about to say the first reason that the main speaker gave, then you are moving to the third and to the fourth step. But if you notice, dear students, the only thing that the third and the fourth steps are basically reminders to you that in your summary of the conversation, it's very important, of crucial importance, that you actually pause and you actually use the reasons that the main speaker gave for holding his or her opinion. You have to mention those reasons. You have to mention those arguments. You shouldn't leave them out of the response, okay? So for example, if the speaker has 4 different reasons why he believes that that is a bad idea, you mention the fourth of them. If he merely has two reasons, as it is the normal case, then you mention both reasons, right? As for example, firstly, in this illustration, right, the one that we listened to, firstly, he considers that if the university is worried about the cost of maintaining the fitness centers, that is completely nonsensical, because the university will still have to pay for maintaining the buildings in order to provoke any possible fire. That was the first reason that the student offered for holding the opinion he had, if you remember. And what I did in my response was to merely summarize it. I just mentioned what he said, and I offered some details and some things that I noticed, of course, that he said, in order, of course, to make the response more solid and more reliable, right? Then, fourth step, this, as I say, to mention the second reason that the main speaker postulates. For example, in this case, in the last illustration, the male speaker said, secondly, the private gyms that the university has offered as a replacement for the fitness center are too far away from campus, and nobody's able to get a taxi there, especially people who are working out at night and they're not able to find a taxi that carries them to that place, right? That is exactly what the main speaker said. And what I'm doing here in the fourth step is to mention that argument and to mention all the details that I managed to catch in my summary, so that, as I mentioned, well, all details and illustrations that are auxiliary and he offered in his talk, I am also repeating them here, okay? And as I said, if you have a speaker who says 3, 4, 5 reasons why he believes that way, mention them all. Mention the third reason, the fourth reason, the fifth reason, it's okay. The only thing is, as I say, always mention all the reasons that the main speaker gives for holding that position. If you do so, your response is going to be complete, okay? Fantastic, and that's the template, that's the structure. It's very simple. As I say, it's starting with a first step to begin with in the reading passage, and you summarize the reading passage, right? We have seen that the university wants to do this and that. On the other hand, we listen to two students discussing this. One of them believes it's a bad idea because, and you start right with the third step, because he considers that, and when you finalize, fourth step, secondly, he also considers that, right? But as I say, always avoiding your opinion. Your opinion here should never be mentioned. You should never augment any detail that was not mentioned in the conversation or in the reading. You shouldn't here make any type of how's this called, of inference. If you, for example, think that, I don't know, if the conversation says that the student will go to the gym, then you can mention, oh, and now he will go to the gym. But if the passage doesn't say if the student will go to the gym, you cannot say he will likely go to the gym, because as I say, that is something that you are thinking, but it's not something that is stated in the conversation or the reading. In this case, you are a journalist, and therefore the only thing you can do is, as I say, summarize the information, okay? Is there any question, dear students, with regard to the template, something that I could clarify? Please tell me. Abigail, Roy, Mariana, Cecilia, questions with regard to the template for this task? Anything? No questions for this template? Okay, no questions, I think. So please take your notes on this, take a picture if you're able to, because tomorrow is going to be a very, very important part of our practice, okay? Well, great. So if you don't have any other question, I'm going to stop the class here then. I'm going to take your assistance, okay? So please don't go. And as I say, tomorrow, we're going to practice for this. So it's very, very important that you come here punctually, because we're going to be practicing for an hour. And in this case, of course, the responses are not going to be that fluid, because before responding, you're going to have to read and listen, right? So we're going to take more time. So as I say, if you are very punctual, dear students, okay, just in order to avoid any repetition, because it's a little bit, difficult when somebody enters late, let's say, and we have to repeat, right, the material once again, because that's somehow damages the experience of the other classmates, okay? So please, for tomorrow's practice, let's try to be very punctual, 8:05, we're going to start, okay? And that way we're going to practice a lot, okay? And it's going to be super helpful and fruitful for you, okay? So now your assistants, okay? So please listen to your names, and please help me with your kind responses to the daily poll. I always appreciate, okay, your kind responses. Great. Any commentary, any questions? you can make it, okay, with total freedom. Here we are, sheet of paper. Okay. So it's here present Abigail Graciela.
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Abigail. What about Brian Roy?
Present.
Thank you very much, Roy. What about Araceli Patiño? Okay, Araceli wasn't here with us. No. What about Oscar Samuel Gonzalo? What about Mariana Vaca? I saw that Mariana was here. I guess she has some trouble with her microphone. But okay, Mariana, it's here. Okay. Don't worry, dear Mariana. Got you. And finally, we have Cecilia Vargas.
Present.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. There you are. Well, great. So thank you. Thank you very much for your presence, dear students. I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow. Okay, as I told you, please try to arrive very early tomorrow at 5 p.m. We're going to start. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful night. And thank you for your kind responses too. Okay, have a wonderful night. See you tomorrow.